Welcome, fellow citizens. This is Larry Platt from the Philadelphia Citizen with you. And this is Citizen Speaks, powered by the Fittler Club. In the spirit of full disclosure, I was going to broadcast from the Fittler Club, but I just didn't get out of my sweats and get showered quick enough in time to make my way over there. So next time I will be live from the Fittler Club. Before we get to our esteemed panel for this discussion about regionalism, and I have to say, I love the Citizen audience. The much younger people at the Citizen tease me about being grumpy all the time. But what makes me happy is the fact that we have nearly 250 people who came out tonight to talk about regionalism. I just love this army of nerds, of policy nerds that we're putting together. So I just want to make a few announcements. First, let me tell you how this will work. For about 20 to 25 minutes, I'll engage the panel with some discussion, at which point I will then bring on esteemed journalist Jon Geeting from Philly 3.0, who wrote a piece for us in the Citizen that was really interesting, I thought, and took a different perspective than my sort of 30,000-foot economic behemoth perspective on regional cooperation. And he really focused at the county level. So I wanted him to ask some specific questions from that piece. And then we'll reserve the last 15 minutes or so for audience questions. And if you don't want to come on screen, indicate that in your question that you can put in the Q&A part of your screen. But please do come on screen, because it's pretty cool when we get citizens engaging with elected officials. So with that, let me just give you a couple of upcoming announcements. The Citizen Speaks series powered by Fittler Club. We've got a bunch of good, cool stuff on the horizon for you. April 28th is Kindness the Key to Happiness. Roxanne Patel Shepelavi in conversation with local entrepreneur and philanthropist and author Brad Aronson, who wrote Humankind, Changing the World One Small Act at a Time. Deepak Chopra called that book a roadmap to how you can create an adventurous and healing life. And they're going to be in conversation with Dr. Karen Ravitch of Penn's Positive Psychology Center. So a little chicken soup for your soul, as they say, on April 28th. On May 6th, I'll be back in conversation with Jill Filipovic, author of OK Boomer, Let's Talk, How My Generation Got Left Behind. This is a fascinating book that shows that millennials are not the avocado toast eating snowflakes that boomers often complain about. And I'll be talking to her, but I'm going to invite some young people into the conversation as well. And then on May 12th, Roxanne Patel Shepelavi and I will be back here engaged in a conversation with the smartest bald man on TV, Ali Velshi of MSNBC, who is also a Citizen board member, will be here on May 12th to give his perspective on the first 100 days of Joe Biden. And we'll, of course, talk, as we always do with Ali, about free expression and the First Amendment and what it was like getting shot by a rubber bullet after during the George Floyd uprising. So a lot of cool stuff programming wise. The other thing I just wanted to toss out to you guys is I'm psyched to announce the launching of Philly Under Fire. It's a new 7-part podcast series that the Citizen is dropping this Thursday, actually. It's from best-selling author and podcaster Joe Piazza, and it explains the murderous epidemic that continues to plague this city. Joe embedded on the front lines of the gun violence epidemic, and she introduces us to the human stories behind it, and also critically for the Citizen, the policy solutions while putting a human face on them. It's really a giant step forward for us. one of our fastest growing things is Citizen Cast, the podcast, but that's really audio versions of our stories. This is the first ambitious, extended, original creative podcast that we're putting out there. So let me know what you think of it. I'm really excited about it. So let's get to regionalism. We're here with, and I'm just going to quickly introduce you by title: Josh Maxwell, Chester County Commissioner; Derek Green, Philadelphia City Councilman; Ken Lawrence, Montgomery County Commissioner; and Dr. Monica Taylor, Delaware County Commissioner. You know, you guys know where I'm coming from on this. Our mayor a year or so ago publicly said that he doesn't engage in serious conversations with elected leaders in the suburbs, that it just hasn't been a part of the ethos. And my feeling has always been, and we've had various times in our past where we have struck, or at least talked about, regional cooperation, that in a 5-county radius that has $431 billion worth of GDP and 7 million people, this region, whatever you want to call it, and we'll get to why we call it Delaware Valley. I don't understand what that is. But this region could have a tremendous economic footprint and if we all cooperate. So with that as the background, I got into thinking about this from Councilman Green and Commissioner Lawrence, because I don't know, maybe it was 6 months ago or so, you guys and I, we talked, and I found out that you guys, in addition to talking trash about each other's, having DJ battles and talking trash about each other's preferences in music, have been having this conversation about how do we join instead of all competing against each other, how do we join forces? So let's begin there. Can you fill us in on the level of conversation that you guys have been having? Councilman Green, why don't you kick it off?
Well, Larry, thank you for moderating this conversation. I also want to thank the Philadelphia citizen for this opportunity. The fact that I think you said over 250 people are on this Zoom call on a beautiful spring 61, 63 day, and not outside and basking in the sunshine also brings me some joy that people are really focused and thinking about some of these opportunities and conversations. And I guess from my perspective, as someone who was born in the city of Philadelphia, I grew up in Bucks County, and I know that all of us, pre-pandemic, would travel to multiple counties all the time. I mean, I think my parents who still live in Bucks County, they go to church in Abington, and they visit me in Philadelphia. They have friends all over the city and all over the region. And I think for most people, they travel from their home into the city, or maybe into one of the other counties represented here, and then go to church or gym or run other errands and see people throughout the region. And, that's something that we need to have a better conversation about. I've known Commissioner Lawrence for a long time, and, he's a proud Temple grad, and he's been, interacting and promoting not only Montgomery County, but the region for a long time in his various roles, not only as a county commissioner, but also in his role at SEPTA. So having these conversations is important. And I think right now is a pivotal time to have this type of conversation, especially when you think about the dollars that will be coming to the region through an American Rescue Plan. We have and I don't want to use the phrase once in a lifetime opportunity, but we do have some, the ability to possibly work collectively together to work on some real challenging issues that Philadelphia alone can't resolve. But I think as a region, we can work together. And we're known, Pennsylvania, as the Keystone State because of its location regarding the other original colonies. And when you think about this region, Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Montgomery, Delaware County, without the support of this region, there goes the Commonwealth. So we need to have more collaboration conversations like this in order to move not only each of our city and 4 counties forward, but also move our Commonwealth forward as well.
Ken, why don't you jump in? Why do you spend all this time talking to Derek Green?
That's a loaded question, Larry. I want to thank the Philadelphia Citizen for hosting this event. It's great to be here with my colleagues, Josh and Dr. Taylor and Derek. And, with Derek and I, it starts with friendship. We were friends before we were elected officials. I've always looked up to Derek. You know, Derek is older than me, so and it's the senior statesman here on the panel. So, you know, when I was a public affairs consultant and he was a city council staffer, we would hang out, we would talk then, help Derek get elected. But I think too, I mean, I was born in Chester County, grew up in Montgomery County, went to Temple for college. So I think that having that perspective of living all around the region, you know, when I go to other places, honestly, I say I'm from Philadelphia, right? You can't say that here because then they want to know what block, what parish, what ward and all that. But really around the country, you know, this is the Philadelphia region. One of the positive things from COVID is the relationship that we've been able to develop among the suburban counties, and Philadelphia has been a part of that too. But we started having a daily phone call back in April of last year, which is now down to 3 times a week. And predominantly it's about COVID, but we're starting to talk about other things as well. And around the election, you know, when we were all dealing with the mail-in ballots, we were able to exchange that. That's something that previously I didn't have that relationship with the county commissioners from other areas. So I'm really looking forward to, as we come out of this pandemic, what the opportunities are for us to collaborate as a region. And of course, I've served on the SEPTA board now for 7 years. I'm the vice chair. I think SEPTA is a prime example of an organization that's the ultimate regional organization. And we all need that. And as we talk about infrastructure, you know, building a strong public transit system, it doesn't just benefit the counties or Philadelphia individually, it benefits the whole region.
Dr. Taylor, why don't you jump in here and tell us about what you see as it's great that you guys are all talking amongst yourselves. What is the possible end game when we talk about regionalism? What effect could regional cooperation have for all of us?
I mean, you know, it's a cliche, but we are stronger together, right? We can be a really strong force when we work together between Philadelphia and the collar counties. And, you know, we have a prime example here. Chester County fully embraced regionalism because they came to our aid and are acting as our health department for Delaware County because we didn't have one. They knew that COVID sees no borders, and they were willing and able, and we thank them over and over again, because without them, I guarantee that hundreds of lives were saved in Delaware County because we were able to work with Chester County and have their health department help us. And so that is a prime example of how regionalism can be successful and really does make a difference.
That tees you up, Commissioner Maxwell, because you are already practicing what we're preaching about. You came to the rescue of your neighbor.
Yeah, I think that's a well-appreciated comment. I have to just push back a little bit and say Delaware County is just an incredible partner. We have an opportunity to collaborate on things and probably overall save on our joint health pandemic costs by working together, whether it's sharing employees, sharing ideas, sharing vehicles, sharing sites, and to her point, we've been able to, I think, help more people by collaborating and sharing resources. I'll just add that the value I've seen, I've known Derek for a few years, looked up to Ken, of course, because since he's older than me, and certainly have a great partner.
He's my senior as well. He's my senior as well.
And have a great partnership with Dr. Taylor. His issues aren't specific to a municipality, right? I might have something going on in Chester County that Derek is an expert in, or Ken's an expert in, or Dr. Taylor's in. It's about being able to text or call and saying, I have an issue. In Chester County, we have one city, the city of Coatesville. It is one stop short of having SEPTA service. So I'll say out loud in front of a SEPTA board member that our only city, the one with the highest poverty rate in our county, the SEPTA system stops just 1.5 miles short of that city. I know SEPTA is working to get SEPTA there, but that's a good opportunity for us to coordinate. And to be honest with you, as a person 1 year in to a county government position, learn from Derek, learn from Ken, and learn from Dr. Taylor.
So when strategic regional efforts have been tried and failed in the past here in this region, it's largely been due to politics, because for a long time it benefited suburban elected officials to beat up on the city when it when it comes to election time. And it benefited the city officials to sort of have their head in the sand and not and think that you can just act like an island, which of course is not the case in a global economy anymore. But I wonder, how do we avoid the pitfalls of politics? One thing that strikes me is you're all Democrats. This is sort of a historic opportunity because the suburbs used to be Republican. But tell me about that. How do you avoid the political pitfalls?
Well, I'll follow up on that, and that's true. But you still had members of the Republican Party, and I can think of representatives in Bucks County that were very supportive of Philadelphia. State Representative John Taylor, being the at one-time chair of local government committee, was always the support of Philadelphia, and you had other members of the General Assembly that have been supportive of Philadelphia from this region. I think in some ways we have allowed, regardless of party, we've allowed the rest of the Commonwealth to kind of brainwash us to not work together. Whereas if you're in Allegheny County and other counties, they work much more collectively together, regardless of the party. And imagine if we, from county officials, members of the State House and General Assembly, worked in a much more aggressive, collaborative fashion and demanded to our General Assembly that we get all the resources that we deserve. I mean, as a member of council, I'm also president of Pennsylvania Municipal League, and I was really outraged to see the lack of vaccine distribution coming to Chester, Bucks, Delaware, Montgomery County. And I can speak from a very personal perspective on the challenges I had in trying to get vaccines for my parents, for them to go through the process. So having our county region citizens not be able to get vaccines is also going to impact us in the city of Philadelphia, because people are moving through the various counties all the time. So I think it's really incumbent upon all of us with this opportunity to really work collectively and demand of Harrisburg, regardless of the party, that we should be getting our consummate share of goods and services, because we over contribute and under receive. And I would venture that's for Philadelphia, Bucks, Chester, Delaware, Montgomery County. And I think to me, the vaccine distribution is an example of that. And so it's incumbent of all of us to demand more from Harrisburg for our region, so that way we can really continue to move forward. And as we are strong as a region, the Commonwealth will be stronger.
You know, that makes me think of two things. One is I didn't even know until COVID that only 6 of the Commonwealth's 67 counties had health departments, and so clearly there's an element of like we need to define and inform about what government is. This revealed the weakness in our regional strategy, or absence of a strategy. The other thing is, a lot of us got excited a few years back when Philadelphia put together a bid for Amazon, and we fell short. I wonder how much that bid might have been well received had it been a 5-county bid. Was there any talk of that? And is that an example of is that an example of what regionalism can mean?
Well, I'll jump in there. There was a lot of talk, and it was a productive conversation. All of the county commissioners and the mayor signed a letter to Amazon. We did submit separate bids, and we have municipalities here in Montgomery County, who I will not name, who submitted their own bids. But it was pretty clear, if you looked at the RFP, that Amazon wanted to be in a city. I love King of Prussia. I love a lot of places in Montgomery County. They wanted to be in a city. We all would benefit from that. Amazon employees would have not all lived in Philadelphia. They would have lived in the 4 counties. So we did work with the state to say whatever package the state was going to give, that we all supported it, whether we got it or not, and did put in a joint letter to Amazon, saying, as it was actually, I think 11 counties. I think we went over into New Jersey and Newcastle as well, that we supported each other, even as we put in our separate bids.
Interesting. Anyone give me an example of what you guys think is possible in terms of what's the low-hanging fruit of a regional strategy that could benefit the lives of Philadelphia's suburban and city residents? Is there any low-hanging fruit? Everything hard?
I think a lot of the folks who are on this panel are probably examples of it, but just access. I live 2 blocks from an Amtrak and SEPTA station, and I could be in downtown Philadelphia in 40 minutes, and I'm in Downingtown. Like, I'm closer to Lancaster than I am to Media, and I'm 45 minutes from 35 minutes on Amtrak from 30th Street Station. And we create that access into suburban Philadelphia, where we have people who will go into the center city, spend money, go into to go watch a ball game and things like that, just increasing, I think, transportation access and highlighting the back and forth in the regional transportation is really, really important, because I think you'd have more people from Chester County or the suburbs generally traveling back and forth to Philadelphia. The quicker it is and the easier it is to get on a SEPTA train or even Amtrak.
And I'll follow up on that. I know one of the conversations we've been having among all of us from a county perspective and the city was one, getting to know each other better, and through calls we've been having with the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce. And then more recently, we had a conversation regarding infrastructure. So, for Montgomery County, trying to expand in reference to King of Prussia and having that type of line is going to benefit Philadelphia. As we try to come out of this pandemic and bring conventions back to the city of Philadelphia and other types of economic development, having that quick access is another selling point for the city, not only for the people that live here, but also for the people that live in Philadelphia that work outside of the city. I know there's been some difference of opinion by some in the city government in reference to providing that type of transportation or reverse commuting. But to me, if there's jobs outside of the city of Philadelphia, in King of Prussia, in Delaware County, in Chester or Bucks County, and we have a 25% poverty rate in Philadelphia, and we can make it easier for people to get those jobs, they're going to bring those resources back into the city of Philadelphia, and they're going to spend that in the city, in our neighborhoods, in our community, as well as that business in any of the counties, Chester, Bucks, Delaware, Montgomery County, are going to have increased sales and productivity by city residents also working there. So we've got to get beyond this us or them, because we're not even competing against other regions. We're not just competing against Chicago and Palo Alto. We're competing globally. And we've got to get beyond this perspective, especially when you look at regions in China and how they are developing infrastructure and just have a growth of jobs, other opportunities. And we got to get out of this colloquialism that we are us against them, when they are working together and they're doing a much better job than we are.
I think that's a great point. Hey, the question is, politically, is that, especially for the suburban representatives, is that a hard sell to your constituents? Because we've been in this arbitrary geographical boundary line mindset for a long time. So how is what Derek just laid out received by your constituents?
Well, I want to go back to something that Derek mentioned earlier too, is exercising our clout in Harrisburg. And Larry, I don't think it should be a Democrat or Republican equation. I think our delegation should work together for this region. And I know Harrisburg a little bit. In Allegheny County, when it's about Allegheny County and all those little counties there, they're together. And we saw that to come together with the vaccine distribution, where it was very easy for the counties to come together and stand together, because we've developed this relationship over the years. For some of the state reps and state senators, it was like, well, we're going to be Wolf or against Wolf. It wasn't about that. It was about this region. We were getting shorted. We were getting screwed. And people needed to stand up for the region. A fair funding formula. Philadelphia is not the only school district that is under-resourced. In each of our counties, we have school districts. That's good for all of us. That's, as Derek mentioned, for jobs, for employment, we're all interconnected here. in this region. And I think to answer your question, one of the first things that we could do is if we could just come together in a region in Harrisburg and demand our fair share. And it's got to be across party lines, not the Democratic caucus and the Republican caucus, but we represent the Southeast. Let's make sure that the Southeast is taken care of.
That's great. Let's bring Jon Geeting in for some questions from him. He wrote a terrific piece last week about, and it made me realize that you take for granted services, and it wasn't until the pandemic that a lot of people realized the role that county government can play or cannot play in your lives. So Jon will join us in a moment. Dr. Taylor, what about for you? Is this idea of cooperation with the city an easy sell to your constituents?
I would have to agree with others. I mean, yes, I think that our constituents see the benefits of, when Philadelphia succeeds, we succeed. When we can improve our transportation infrastructure as a whole, that makes it easier for folks from our county to access the city for work or to go and visit. It also makes it easier for people from the city to come out to work or to come out to see the small town, to travel to media for the day and visit and all of those types of things. And of course, trying to push our narrative in Harrisburg and work together as a group is really low-hanging fruit. And we saw the vaccine effort as a really good example as to how we can push our weight in Harrisburg and work together as a force to be reckoned with in the state.
So it's interesting looking at the questions that have been posted so far. They're traveling along the lines of what I've just been asking. Harry asks, how do you convince boutique towns like Media and New Hope, Lambertville, that entering a cooperative agreement with large commercial centers benefits them? Commissioner Maxwell, how do you convince boutique towns?
I think, we each kind of have a role to play in our regional economy, right? We can't recreate Center City, Philadelphia in Chester County, right? If I want to go shopping, and spend a day shopping, I'll go to King of Prussia. If I want to dine under the stars, I go to Media. If I want to access, Rittenhouse Square or Old City or watch the best team in the NBA, I got to go to Philadelphia. Chester County, we have our pyramids are parks, our open spaces. It's lakes and it's trails. So I think it's just making sure that we're highlighting all the things that we're really good at. And then we get people moving back and forth, spending money across our county lines. It's important that when someone comes out to go to Longmont Gardens of Chester County, they stop by Westchester, grab a sandwich. And when I'm visiting my in-laws in Northwest Philadelphia, I meet up with Derek and we grab a sandwich somewhere near him.
You meet up with the much older Derek Green. Let's go to
Larry, I thought you were on my side. You're hanging out with Ken too much. Come on now.
Let's go to the senior statesman on the panel.
That's right. Let's go to Jon Geeting. Jon, are you with us?
I am. I'm here. Hey, thanks.
Hey, man.
Thanks, Larry, and thanks for joining us, everybody. So I wrote a piece for the Citizen last week that I've been thinking about for a while. So I'm going to take like a little slightly different turn. I've been really interested for many years, probably since about like 2010 or so, in the issues around like municipal fragmentation in Pennsylvania and like the difficulty of really governing at a regional level in a state that has over 2,500 different municipalities. And the piece is titled "Let's Make County Government a Thing in Pennsylvania," which is a little cheeky. Like, you all are here as elected representatives of county government. It is a thing, but at the same time, like it's not as powerful in Pennsylvania as the municipal layer of government is, in some of the ways that I think really matter for things like land use planning and providing public services at like a scale that's like cost effective, or transportation planning and things like that really require like governance over like a big land area, whereas like a lot of the powers that we've ascribed to municipal governments live at like a very small and less coordinated level. So like this was really pointed, I was interested in trying to get this in front of some of the governor candidates. I think this is ultimately more of like a state level solution, but I'm really interested in sort of the ways that like county elected officials think about, patching in for trying to solve this like fragmentation problem that I'm sure, you all are seeing. So I just have a few questions that I wanted to just throw out there for discussion. So I guess we could go around the horn. Like, what's the area that each of you see as sort of like lacking in the municipal layer of government in terms of like services that are being provided or not provided, that you think county government might be better positioned to step in and provide a different kind of service? Does anything come to mind on that? Ken, maybe let's start with you.
I'll just jump in to discuss the fragmentation. So in Montgomery County, we have 62 municipalities and we have 21 school districts. So there's been a smorgasbord because it's up to the school districts on how they were reopening or what they were doing. So we've tried to do a lot at the county level to convene and bring people together. But you're right. I mean, ultimately, that power does reside with the individual school board. And could there be a better way? Could there be a better way of doing that? I think absolutely there could. Commissioner Maxwell has been a mayor and is now a commissioner, so he can probably talk about what he liked better, being the mayor or being the commissioner, because I understand he was all powerful in Downingtown, police escorts and the not. So I don't know if he gets that similar level of protection as a county commissioner now.
I think he was on the Iron Throne, I think, or something like that.
The Iron Throne of Downingtown, Pennsylvania. I think when we talk about, I think the partnership that Delaware County and Chester County kind of have right now is a good example of how we can regionalize resources, save money, and provide better services. I think there's an opportunity. We're a Commonwealth, so every 2 or 3 miles in a place like Chester or Montgomery, Delaware County is another municipality, which means another firehouse, another police department, another city hall, a borough hall, and all those things take up a lot of resources. Now, no one wants to give up that local power, and certainly I would never wrestle that away from anybody. But as we run into shortages of things like volunteer fire departments, which we have out here in the suburbs, there might be a way to regionalize some of these resources, provide better protection in fire and law enforcement, and be able to help more people by saving a buck or two. And I would just mention that as maybe something we can start talking about here in Southeast PA.
Yeah, if I could follow up on that, I think all of the people on this panel have talked about how they've had to come together regarding public health. And I think we need to continue that going forward. It's great that so many of us are getting vaccinated, even with the temporary freeze from the CDC on the J&J vaccine, but we're going to always have continual issues regarding public health going forward. And at a county level, in Philadelphia as a city and a county, we're going to continue to have those issues. So to the extent that we can continue the dialogue that started because of this global pandemic and catastrophe called COVID, and continue those conversations going forward and how we can learn from each other and bring in other actors to make this a public-private partnership. When you think about University of Pennsylvania, Temple, Children's Hospital, Jefferson, these are all regional entities that are in all of our counties and in Philadelphia. So there's opportunity to learn from some of the best in the business. This region is known as the EDS and MEDS, dynamic space in reference to the country and I would say around the world. So let's continue this conversation of how we can enhance public health through all of our counties and bring in some private partners. And it's not something we have every day, but to the extent that the health commissioners of our region are communicating on a semi-regular basis along with some of these private institutions, that's only going to help all of us and also make us prepare for the future issues and try to make our region healthier as well.
Similar to other counties and other areas, we have 49 municipalities and 16 school districts. And what we were able to come together during COVID because of what was going on. And we were having, a call with all of our municipalities every week and a call with all of our school districts every week to try and organize around, what we were doing in our response to COVID. And also, looking at how we've been using the municipalities through this to combat food insecurity and trying to work with our municipalities to get food out to regions that really need it. And we have our COG who meets every month, and that's our municipal officers who meet every month. And so we meet with them to kind of talk about ways that we can coordinate or what's coming down from the county level, such as our rental assistance program, and trying to figure out ways that we can work with them hand in hand to try and make sure we're being as efficient as possible.
Dr. Taylor, would you mind defining what a COG is for the group?
Council of Governments.
Okay. Is that like a board of all the governments in your area, or is it just like some of them, or?
Yes, so it is the municipal managers of all of our municipalities within the county.
Got it. Yeah, that's really interesting. That's obviously not something that we have to deal with here in Philadelphia. I mean, do you feel like that board is like an area that could be, I don't know, empowered more as like a governance board to make regional types of decisions? Is that how it works, or not so much?
Currently, I think that they use it as a sounding board for each other to kind of talk about different issues in the various municipalities, but then also what affects them as a whole and how they can move forward together. Or, we're very different in Delaware County, right? We have some that are more urban areas, some more rural areas. So kind of talking about how different programming affects each area. And so that's how they use it. And what I've been doing is we've been going to those meetings to just talk about what we're doing on the county level so that they understand what's going on at the county level, and then how they can talk about how they might be able to implement the programs that we're trying to do at the county level. For example, we're trying to build a health department. So I've gone to the meeting to talk about the development of the health department, how that's going to possibly impact them. And then also I'm going back next month. So continue to keep that conversation so that everybody understands what's going on and we can work together to move forward.
Thank you. So question for Councilmember Green. So I understand you're leading the PA Municipal League Board these days. I've been thinking about the kind of state situation. Obviously, Pennsylvania, urban areas of the state have a pretty hard time getting good policy that helps us out of Harrisburg. And you got all these associations at the state level. We've got like the township supervisors who have like their own lobbying arm. You got the borough councilors, you got the county commissioners associations, and then you've got like the municipal league that's more of like something that everybody can be in, but there's no like city organization that's like taking the problems of like specifically like the 80 or so cities around the state and trying to like unite them behind an agenda at the state level to help them. So I feel like the municipal league shoulders a lot of that role in the absence of like a city exclusive sort of thing. What do you see as like the areas of like state policy, state local government policy that could unite urban areas across the state, Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, obviously, but also like, the Yorks and Eries and other kind of downtown places or urban type of places in the state?
Well, the Pennsylvania Municipal League is an organization that's similar to National League of Cities, where you have mayors and council members from around the Commonwealth, just like National League of Cities. You have mayors and aldermen and council members from around the country pushing an agenda for the organization. National League of Cities really pushed hard for the American Rescue Plan. And we've taken that same perspective to push hard for things in Harrisburg that's going to benefit cities around the Commonwealth. I've been on the board for a couple of years, became president last year of the Pennsylvania Municipal League. And one of the things that people will be surprised to hear is that the issue of Act 111, which is the collective bargaining agreement that applies for the police department, and there's certain things that cities can do, some things they can't because of the binding arbitration. And that's been a big talk of the conversation in Philadelphia coming out of the tragic killing of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, and then, in October, Walter Wallace Jr. And we're also seeing the incidents that are happening now in Minneapolis. But many cities in the league and some of the leadership of our executive committee, cities you want to think of. We're also championing for Act 111 reform. And so even before I became the president, the league has been working with State Representative Donna Johnson Bullock. And at the same time, I think there was some legislation she was had introduced along with State Representative Russ Diamond, from my recollection, to make reform regarding Act 111, because you had cities in Lancaster and Scranton and Pittston, as well as Philadelphia, that were having these issues and challenges in reference to some of the police reforms that you've been hearing a need for around the nation. So there are many more things that we're alike than we're different. I remember when I first got involved with Pennsylvania Municipal League and Mayor George Hood, who was the mayor of Indiana, Pennsylvania, and he was complaining about the challenges of having Indiana University of Pennsylvania in his borough, and because they're a nonprofit organization, have such a large landmass and impacts the taxation of the city. Well, Philadelphia, we also have a number of large nonprofits, and there's been all kinds of conversations about those issues as well. That's also impacted Philadelphia. So you want to think that Indiana, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, Pennsylvania would have similar issues, but we have a lot more in common. Sometimes it's just a difference between the comma and the zero, but the fundamental issues are still similar. And I think that's what we got to focus on. The fundamental issues are similar. And we as counties in the southeast part of Pennsylvania have a lot of common issues that if we work collectively together and demand on Harrisburg to give us more resources, I think that's something that would benefit not just Philadelphia, but all the counties represented this evening.
Yeah, that's a great example, because it's like in Philadelphia, like the large nonprofits, the hospitals and the universities and stuff, they take up a lot of land area, but we've also got this massive county-sized property tax base where it's like not all of our land, or like a significant chunk is taken up by the nonprofits. But when you've got like municipal governments, like the county seats that like host all these like government buildings and institutions, in their town, but they've got like a super tiny land area to like pay the property taxes with. That seems unfair. That like, it's cool to be a county seat, but it's also like you're gonna be giving up a lot of your like prime, usually downtown, like taxable land area for these like government institutions. I feel like the state government or somebody should be paying them for that. The state government should be paying them pilots for that stuff. So one last question about transportation funding. I'm personally involved in some transit advocacy here in the city through like the Transit Forward Philly Coalition. We're really working on state funding at the moment, just to put in a little plug for that. I think it's something that's really important for people to understand who are tuning in for this as a regional issue. Next year, the Turnpike is going to start giving much less money to the transit agencies around the state, to the tune of about $400 million. It's going to go from $450 million down to $50 million in a year. Now there's federal money coming in, like that's kind of, blunted the like emergency nature of this thing, but we've still got like a very like unstable state level funding situation for public transit that in the southeast region here really like hurts us all if that were to permanently fall short, as seems like it could be the case without more of a solution. So part of that is part of the conversation, in addition to like replacing the state money that's gonna fall short, is passing local level tax options for regional funding for transit, hopefully not to fill in state cuts, but to like top up service like in addition. So that introduces, I think, some like interesting regional political issues around that. Can you talk about like a little bit about how your boards, your county officials are thinking about the transit funding issue at the state and what you're doing on that?
John, I'll jump in first there. First of all, this isn't the state has an obligation to do this, so don't let them off the hook at all. All right. I love the idea. Of topping off, but we absolutely need to fix that and make sure that we don't have a hole in funding. And once again, this is a statewide issue. We should be working with Allegheny County and Pittsburgh and all the other places that have transit. But this is a prime example of what I'm talking about. It hurts this region, if we have poor public transportation, if the infrastructure continues to fail, if we have to eliminate service. So yeah, I know that there are conversations going on with the counties. We're talking with Chester, expanding service and doing that. But in no way, shape, or form is this to fill in the state's hole. The state needs to plug that hole, and then we can put some icing on the top there.
Agreed. Yeah. And any other thoughts on that as to how you're thinking about approaching that or working with the state reps on that? Anybody?
Well, we're certainly going to rally the troops. I agree with everything that Commissioner Lawrence said. I'll just say, like, it's so important to our economy to get people back and forth from the suburbs to Center City, Philadelphia, or to Philadelphia. I just expecting a question about just kind of details. I wrote it down. Our average income in Chester County is a little more than $99,000 a year, and we have 75% home ownership in our county. We have people here that want to go to Philadelphia to spend money to buy things, to do stuff, and making sure we have access, public transportation access, just increases the frequency. It gets more money flowing from the suburbs to the city of Philadelphia. I think something that benefits both the region and our city that we ultimately rely on.
Hey, John, we've got some people with questions. Let's see if we can bring them up. Is there any brave soul want to join us to ask your question in person? I always like this because the first time we did one of these, there was some dude in a tank top lying down on his sofa asking a question. I love that. It's like, this is democracy 101. Let's see, as we're waiting, let me see if there's anything I can, any question that I can paraphrase while we're waiting for someone to come on. Well, this we've covered a little bit, but can you speak about plans for federal money coming to counties from the federal government as part of the Rescue Plan Act? But before we get to that, let's hear from, we'll come back to the question of the federal rescue plan. Rafiq, is it? Hi, Rafiq.
Yeah, good evening. How you doing?
What's on your mind?
Okay, thanks for having this session this evening. I think it's very, very thought-provoking. And I put a question in the Q&A regarding economic development, particularly looking at what exists with the African-American businesses in the Philadelphia region. And I believe it was according to the Pew Trust, there was a report that was done that said that about 2.5% of the businesses in the entire region are African-American. So I was wondering if this is an opportunity or could it be low-hanging fruit, Larry, like you were talking about earlier, for the representatives on this call this evening to come up with some type of memorandum of understanding to address the lack of business and how would they stimulate growth to address that?
Yeah, that's to be clear, 2.5% of Philadelphia businesses owned by African Americans. I think it's 6% if you count sole proprietors.
Well, in the city of Philadelphia, there's 18% of African American businesses are African American, and 6% of those are actually employers that actually employ individuals, and 2.5% of the businesses in the region are African American.
Right.
So
And if I can,
Go ahead, Derek.
Finish your comment, but yeah, if I can just jump in on that question, and not only is 6% of the businesses with employees are owned by African Americans, we have a 43% African American population in Philadelphia, but from people from a Latin perspective, a 15% population in the city, but only 4% of those businesses with employees are owned by those of Hispanic descent. But also that applies into the suburbs. Each one of our region represented here have individuals both from Black and Brown communities, and I think we have not done enough regional perspective on how we not only do what we need to do in the city of Philadelphia for Black and Brown businesses, but also as a region. There are historic, and I'll focus from the African American community, historic communities in the suburbs. I talked earlier about, born in Philadelphia, but grew up in Trevose. Grew up in Ben Salem, and Trevose is one of the oldest African American communities in the Commonwealth. So there's a number of different communities around the region, and we need to do a better job of how we connect those opportunities for those businesses. But it's not just we should do this because it's a feel-good thing. We should do this because this provides economic benefit to the region. So imagine a business owner in, let's say, Bristol or Coatesville or Norristown or Darby, as well as Philadelphia, and let's say Southwest Philadelphia. Those businesses were able to grow and hire more employees because we've made investments in those communities. They're going to hire more people, more dollars will circulate, and we'll grow wealth not only in those communities, but for all of our counties, which ultimately over time will allow us to possibly reduce our taxes because we've grown the base of successful businesses in those communities. So I think that's something that we also should focus on from a regional perspective of how we help to grow businesses in all the communities in the region.
That's great. Thank you for that question, Rafiq. And I do think that's, and Councilman Green, you are cooking up plans for a public bank, which I keep wanting to talk to you about because I think that's a really interesting issue. There's Ann Gemmel, who is a expert on workforce development, writes a great column for The Citizen. Ann, welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for bringing me up. Hi, Councilman and all county commissioners. It's a really great panel that The Citizens put together. I have a lot of great hopes for regionalism. I think that politically, we have far more power and flex on the national stage when we work together and when we get things done together. And my biggest issue right now is that I've noticed a real tendency in politics towards short-term thinking, when in fact some of our biggest, most concerning problems are on the mid to long-term horizon. Most importantly, some people would say the most important one is climate change. There's a case to be made there. Personally, the most important crisis on the horizon for me that I'm working on through the Future Works Alliance Philadelphia is the future of work, which means a lot of things to different people, but it's basically, the fact that rapid technological change is affecting all the ways we live and work. So, it was great to hear about SEPTA, but we have to recognize the fact that remote work is going to stick around one way or another. And we're going to have automated vehicles pretty soon in our lifetime. We are going to have cars that are driverless. And shopping. A couple of people mentioned shopping on this panel. Amazon is seeing year over year steady increases in online shopping. What does that do? So I think the question is how can we create infrastructure and carve time into people's busy lives? All of the people on this panel are incredibly busy and they have little political incentive to work with people or benefit areas of the region that don't directly reelect them, candidly. So how can we move past the regionalism that was born out of crisis of COVID and move into a place where regionalism can work on problems proactively? And the top problem, I think, is making sure more people can access the work of the future, and that enhances the talent pool for the entire region, which, by the way, none of our major employers care where their employees live. They want that. Well, a few do. The public sector ones do, but most just want software engineers. They want the top talent to be in this region and accessible and hired, right, and retained. So can you talk a little bit about what needs to happen so that regionalism can last beyond this crisis, and that we can foster more mid to long term thinking instead of defaulting to the short-termism of politics?
Before we get to each of you to address that, and when I wrote that piece a couple weeks ago, I talked to Ted Hirschberg, the legendary professor at Penn, who tried to do this in the 80s and 90s. And he said the exact same thing, that short-term political thinking rules the day, and that's what torpedoed a regional strategy then. So with that as background, why don't we start with who wants to jump in? Anyone? Josh, why don't you go ahead?
I knew you were going to say me. I know in Chester County, we really prioritize, and I think your question is, I think, really on point. Like, where do we go from here? Now that Ken was nice enough to give me his cell phone number, how do I use it after COVID? And I think workforce development is a really important thing. We like to think at Chester County that it's a selling point for us. When we recruit businesses to Chester County, one of the things we put on the sheet that we give to the folks when we're trying to get them here is how much we invest in workforce development through our Chester County Academic Development Council. Work with over 2,000 students annually. We do incumbent worker training, all kinds of support for businesses. And we let them know we're going to be with you when you get started, when you get going, and as you expand. And I think it's really important to use some of these tools regionally and make sure that maybe it should be a priority of Chester County to leverage those investments for the region as well. Maybe it's something that Chester and Delaware County can do together as we're securing businesses, because if you are headquartering your business in Delaware County, you're going to have employees from Chester County and vice versa. So I'm glad that you said that. I want you to know I wrote it down, and I already told Ken I'm going to call him.
That's great. Anyone else want to jump in on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in briefly. I think there's some opportunities to pull these areas together. And you talk about the future of work, but we need to also look at some of the opportunities and provide training opportunities for some of these new areas. When I get up and try to work out in the mornings, I've been seeing a lot of commercials lately from GE talking about there's going to be 30 new electric vehicles by 2025. Could this be an opportunity as we're looking at both the American Rescue Plan and possibly the American Jobs Plan? We're talking about infrastructure. Where are these electric charging stations going to be? Who's going to provide that? Can we look at SEPTA to start doing EV stations in some of their parking locations? City of Philadelphia through the Philadelphia Parking Authority, or on-street parking, or also at the airport, or in some of our private sector collaborations with other malls and other locations. So this is an opportunity where we can start talking about those regional perspectives, because these cars are coming. That's a new area we can help provide jobs and opportunities regarding infrastructure, maybe a public-private partnership that we can do it regionally. So I think there's a lot of different opportunities and conversations. And I think, and you talked about politics, too often it's the politicians who have not worked regionally. And I'll say that at the local level, our state representatives, they have the Southeast delegation. We've got the Greater Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, the Pennsylvania Convention Center Authority, Delaware Valley Regional Planning Commission, SEPTA. They're doing things regionally, but it's only more recently that the elected officials who are starting to think more regionally. I think that's something of benefit going forward, that if we finally can get on board, then we as a region can really move forward on a lot of these new opportunities like electric vehicles.
Thanks for that.
I would just have to agree. Looking forward and looking at how we can use the American Rescue Plan and the job plan for planning for workforce development as we move in the future, and looking at our out-of-school youth or the workers who have been displaced throughout the pandemic, and the needs for programs and training for the workforce of the future. And I agree with Councilman Green, thinking about how, it might be the politicians that have been working together necessarily, but I know that on our level, like our head of workforce development has been working with the regional heads of workforce development from Montgomery County and from Chester County and from Philadelphia to try and figure out what the plan is as a region and how we move forward together.
Yeah, if I could make one suggestion before I yield the floor, gig workers and independent contractors, in many ways, gig workers, that's the new first rung to the world of work, right? And we have no idea how many people work in the gig economy in this region. We have estimates, but that would be an amazing collaborative project that would help all of us build some leverage with Uber, with Lyft, with Instacart. If we did convene the politicians and the workforce boards and get a handle on who is the gig worker, what sort of safety net things do they need? Can we create a fund for workman's comp? Like the list goes on. And Florida, New York, some other places have done this, but really in our area, Uber drivers are going all over the 11 county place. So it needs to be a regional project. So I would put that on the table as something that would really help us better understand the talent pool and, you know, who exactly is the gig worker, because their crisis was acute during the COVID. And we don't know if pandemic unemployment assistance is going to last. That was specially created for them. So I would say, you know, that's something to think about.
This is great. Ann, thank you so much as usual.
Hey, Larry, I did just want to jump in on Ann's question too, which was a great one. Education is key. Employers want to locate places where there's an educated populace. That's something that can come across regional lines. And then to her point, they don't care where they live, but people can live anywhere. You know, we have a lot of cultural amenities here in this region. Workforce development, Montgomery County is the #1 manufacturing county in Pennsylvania. I know we work very closely with Bucks County. There's a lot of manufacturing jobs in all of our counties, and they need a trained workforce. So I think that's another key opportunity as well.
Yeah, I would agree, and accept the fact that advanced manufacturing is moving so much faster than the K-12 career and technical education system can keep up, and faster than a lot of community college programs can keep up. So that's another opportunity for, you know, sharing best practices, like Josh mentioned, like what they're doing. No, do the other counties know the great things that Chester County is doing? There's great programs in Bucks County Community College. Do the other community colleges know about that? So building that table that can last, where even just at the basic level, best practices can be traded and advances in the private sector can be shared with the public sector training and education systems that's what the Future Works Alliance is trying to build, that civic space to connect the creators of new technology with the public sector and government leaders who inevitably have to keep up with those shifts.
Great, thank you, Ann, and nice plug. I like that. We have a ton of people that want to talk about this. Do you guys have a few more minutes for like 2 more questioners? Because I want to be respectful of your time, but Elaine, you're already on screen.
Time and a half now, Larry? Or we
time and a half. Yeah. Okay. The check's in the mail. Elaine, welcome. What's on your mind?
Thank you. Well, you just were talking about education, and you know, I think that cooperation among educational institutions is absolutely essential. But the question I was going to pose to you, and you've already been talking about it, at least indirectly, and that's the leadership of the business community in all of this. I'm a native Philadelphian. I've lived in Philadelphia, Montgomery County, Delaware County. But for the last several years, I have been in Chicago, Phoenix, and Anchorage. And I just want to point, first of all, to Phoenix, where the business community really led an endeavor for bringing all these little towns together to support things that would help the entire Maricopa County. Now, it was a single county, but you wouldn't believe the divisions there in terms of East Valley, West Valley, and all the rest. But as the business community leadership, and Chicago was a little less so with business community leadership, except Chicago, in Chicago, because they thought of themselves as the capital of the Midwest, as they are, they used the phrase Chicagoland, and everybody used that. And Chicagoland meant all of the collar counties and the city of Chicago together. And I remember thinking to myself, you never hear Philadelphia land. And it would be a good thing we did. But my question is, where do you see leadership coming from the business community here in this region of the Philadelphia and the collar counties?
Great question. Who wants to tackle that?
I think it's huge. I think it's critical. And when you look at Chicago in particular and other places, yeah, it would be great to have the business community involved in this discussion, and not just the usual suspects. We all have major employers in our counties, and getting them to coordinate and working with the downtown businesses. Yeah, I think definitely if we're building a table here, one of the legs of that table has to be the business community, but not just the downtown Philadelphia business community. We've got a lot of major employers. I'll speak for Montgomery County, but I'll speak for Chester and DelCo, and we can start listing them all, getting them all together as well, and thinking as a region, I think would be great.
Anyone else? You guys talked earlier about Allegheny County. I mean, there's an example there, the Allegheny County Conference, right? The Allegheny Conference, which is business leaders, nonprofit leaders, elected officials, all coming together in a partnership to draw up a vision, a shared vision, a 10-year plan. We don't have that here. So that's a great question, Elaine. Thank you.
Let me point out that there's something called the Philadelphia Development Authority. And I know about that because when I was in Chicago, part of a civic group, we actually came here and visited the Navy Yard and learned from the Philadelphia Development Authority. And so I'm not sure what role the Philadelphia Development Authority would have in any of this.
Thank you so much, Elaine, for your question. And Derek, go ahead.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, we do it, but we don't do it in the public sector or some of the economic development or some of these major infrastructure issues. If I go to any one of the counties represented or the city and pull someone aside and start saying EA, they're going to do the rest of the chant and fly eagles fly. So we do it in certain things, but we don't take that same energy and do it in other, I want to say more important, but just more critical things like infrastructure, education, public safety, public health. So we have that spirit in certain dynamics, but we doesn't translate. And I think that's what I started to see. And really, to be quite honest, us from elected officials have not done that. Others have been doing it, but we need to do more. And also we need to have the business community also push harder for that to happen.
Larry, can I be heard?
So here's, Ken, was that? Okay, so joining us is the legendary Ted Hertzberg, who I mentioned earlier, who attempted all this. And so I wonder if we can close out with Ted's words of wisdom for you young guns who are trying to do what he tried to do in the 80s and 90s. Welcome.
I want to congratulate you on the effort, and I'm really delighted to hear so many articulate, intelligent voices. The saddest thing for me is the lack of continuity. It's almost like institutional amnesia, that we did all this incredible work for 10 years and very little of that has been carried on. The fact that there are more Democrats in the suburbs means that the we, they, us, them stuff that we fought so hard against will be easier to deal with. You've hit on so many of the major themes. Unless the numbers have changed, the 5 counties of the Southeast out of 67 counties account for what, a third of the population, more than 36% of the jobs, the engine of economic development. If you don't take advantage of that clout in Harrisburg, it's just sad. With the technology of email and social media today, the task, I think, before you becomes much easier than it was for us when we didn't have that. The last thing I want to say is there has to be some way to get funding for some kind of inter-university consortium to be the year after year, decade after decade, person that keeps the reservoir of knowledge and contacts going so that you don't have to start from scratch. I mean, in 1995, we brought 2,000 people to the Pennsylvania Convention Center and presented a notebook with over 100 regional projects that came from all the major regional networks, whether it was regional arts and culture, regional business. I don't have time to go through it all, but there's some way to draw on all that knowledge and essentially update it. There's just so much to be done. And there's so many challenges out there. So thank you, guys. Good work. Keep it up.
Hey, Dr. Hirschberg, if Larry could connect us, I'd love to be able to pick your brain about
What's
this. 'Cause
left
I
of
know
it
you
is
have
all
a-
yours, Ken.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we can meet at Workhorse Brewing too, if you want.
Oh, that's so
we
good.
could-
That's right. It's my son's co-founder of the brewery.
Is that
I'm well
part
aware.
of is that part of the Monco Beer Trail, Ken? I know
It's
you have this-
Monco Makers. Yes, it's one of
I
our
love it.
Here we
great
go.
breweries and distilleries in Montgomery County.
Right. But and just I just want to say one point on what Dr. Hirschberg said. I definitely think we need to can have that continuity and maintain his institutional knowledge. But just imagine coming out of this conversation we've been having and collaboration that as we go into future budgets at the state level, the mayor of the city of Philadelphia, the chair of the county or council president for Delaware County Council, all were to say to the governor that we have our own individual asks for our jurisdictions, but on this issue, we're trying to get collective support. Imagine how powerful that would be. And also going to the Southeast delegation saying, these are the issues that we need you to fight for us. Now we'll have our own individual issues, but as a region, these are some things that we need you to prioritize in the state budget. To me, I think that thought would be revolutionary, and I really would start to really demonstrate the power and the strength of this region. But we don't historically do that because it's individual dynamics, but collectively we could have so much more power in doing that going forward.
This has been great, and I want to keep the conversation going, and I want to talk to you all about how we can do that, because I think this should be I love that you guys are doing this behind the scenes, but I think this should be a public conversation as well. So I can't thank you all enough, and to the audience out there, we'll see you again at the end of the month with Brad Aronson, and thanks again, everyone. Enjoy, and thank you all for staying later. But there were so many good questions. Appreciate it all, and thanks to Jon Geeting as well. Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Thank you. Take care.